Call the police. I had saved $250,000 for my retirement. Somehow, it disappeared when Robert moved out while George was arranging for the police. I contacted Robert. He yelled back, "Stop it." I was shocked, but I had already reported it to the police. My name is Martha. I moved to New York to work when I was young and had 2 sons. Both of my sons are now adults, and my husband passed away early. I retired at 65. I had saved $250,000 for my retirement, so I wasn't too worried about my living expenses. Still, it was time to think about my future life. In the midst of this, Robert, who had always lived at home, talked about moving out. Robert's wife, Sarah, had complained to my son that she didn't want to take care of me in the future, so I expected this conversation to come up someday. I had no expectation for Sarah to take care of me. In fact, Sarah couldn't do household chores or cook, so I had been doing everything for both of them. Have you found a place to live? Not yet, but we plan to decide soon. Let me know when you move. George and his family are planning to take me on a retirement celebration trip soon. That it. I'm saving money now, and once I have enough, I'll move out. I reported Robert's situation to George over the phone. George suggested, maybe you should install security cameras. Once they're gone, your house might become an easy target for burglars. That's a good idea. The news always says that elderly living alone are easy targets. Additionally, the trip with George and his family was going to be for an extended period. I was indeed anxious about leaving my house unattended for a long time. I immediately purchased the security cameras that George had researched for me. They were due to arrive tomorrow. Little did I know how useful they would become later on. After a while, since I heard about Robert and Sarah's plans to move, Sarah approached me about the moving expenses. Martha, could we borrow some money for our moving expenses? I was actually fired from my part-time job. We won't be able to cover the moving expenses at this rate. Fired from your part-time job? What did you do? Please, Martha, lend us the money. Reluctantly, I agreed to lend them money for the moving expenses and enough to live on for a while after moving. Make sure you pay it back. Sure, we will. She always responds well like that. But I was feeling resentful towards Sarah. After a few days, I considered talking to Robert about it. It seemed Robert was not preparing for the move, so I asked him about it. That's when I discovered a shocking fact. I lend Sarah the moving expenses, so you should be able to move now, right? I don't know anything about that. What? I was stunned. She said she would pay it back after moving. I don't know about that. How much did you lend her? About $3,000. What? There's no way we can pay that back. I'm a temp worker, but Sarah said she needed the loan. I couldn't hide my surprise. Just then, Sarah returned home. I rushed to the entrance eager to confront her about what happened to the money for the move. I'm sorry I spent it, but you have money, so $3,000 shouldn't be a big deal, right? There's no way that's okay. What'd you spend it on? Designer bags and new clothes. The new ones were so cute, but I can't spend any more money until I find a part-time job. Don't worry, I'll pay you back as soon as I find a job, bit by bit. I could only be appalled by Sarah's words. I'm retired now, so I really need you to pay me back, you know. Do you understand? I get it. Geez, is this the so-called bullying mother-in-law? I just want to get out of this house already. Sarah was only making selfish remarks. I regretted lending her money. George was supposed to visit today. George has a 1-year-old child, and his wife Michelle is a working mother. They had mentioned taking me on a trip, and we were supposed to decide on the dates today. Robert hadn't returned from his temp job yet, so it was just me and Sarah at home. Sarah, could you help out today since George and his family are coming? I can't do chores. I just got my nails done. Then could you at least set the table or do some shopping? George's family is coming for lunch. You prefer George over Robert, don't you? That's not true. I just want them to have a nice time since it's been a while. As I said that, Sarah clearly looked displeased. It's not like I'm trying to favor one son over the other. but it's natural to want to treat them a bit better when you haven't seen them for a while. I've never made any comparisons between her and Michelle, despite Sarah having some personality issues, but she dislikes Michelle and always picks fights with her. When George's family arrived, Sarah blatantly scrutinized Michelle. "Looking plain as usual, huh? Couldn't he dress up a bit? You're in front of your mother-in-law." As if I'd ever thought such a thing. Her insincerity in trying to flatter me only at such times was deplorable. "Don't mind her, she's just in a bad mood." I tried to smooth things over, but Michelle looked down apologetically. She's always being bullied by Sarah. I tried to protect her as much as possible, but it seems Sarah doesn't like that either. Back in the kitchen, I spoke to Sarah. "Sarah, try to get along with Michelle a bit better." "I want to, but I just don't like her gloomy attitude, and please stop favoring her over me." "I don't intend to do that." "Is it because she has a child?" "Of course I'm happy about the grandchild, but I don't favor her just for that reason." Sarah glanced at me and snorted. I wonder if she understood. Why not let her help with this? Michelle has to take care of the child, so you do favor her because she has a grandchild. Hearing this, Sarah began to sulk and started relaxing with a drink, refusing to help at all. I wanted to tell her she wasn't a child, but I held back and let her do as she pleased. After a while, I heard the sound of a commotion between Sarah and George's family. Rushing over, I found Sarah drunk, trying to grab at Michelle. George was desperately trying to stop her. "What on earth are you doing? I can't stand this woman. So what if she has a child? Is she looking down on me?" Then Michelle apologetically says, "Sorry, I didn't realize Sarah was so bothered by it," showing pictures of Lauren and all. "I'm sorry. There's no need to apologize. Sarah is the one being unreasonable, getting angry and trying to grab Michelle all of a sudden." It turned out the whole incident started with Sarah provoking George's family. Sarah, who had been drinking, started ranting incomprehensibly, and when Michelle remained silent, she flew into a rage. "What do you mean I'm not in the wrong? I can't stand this woman or my mother-in-law. I've decided to move, and it feels so liberating." Sarah shouted angrily and began throwing dishes and glasses. In a panic, I moved Michelle and Lauren away from Sarah, while George desperately tried to restrain her. Then Robert came home and was stunned by the mess in the room, despite the fact that George and Michelle had come over for a visit after a long time. This happened. Robert took his wife away, and the situation calmed down for the moment. While cleaning up the messy room, Michelle looked apologetic. Although there had been a dispute, the travel plans were successfully arranged in the end. George's family left with smiles, which reassured me. And then Robert called me into the living room. Meanwhile, Sarah had fallen asleep, still drunk. "We decided to move out sooner. We're leaving next weekend." "Really? Is money okay?" "What about the house?" "She says she'll figure it out. But more importantly, we want to keep moving costs down. So could you and George help out?" "Sure, but George just left. I'll have to contact him. Could you call them for me? I find it hard to ask after what happened earlier." "Of course." I readily agreed. I'm sure that once Sarah leaves this house, she will feel a little more at ease. I thought that Sarah might be feeling some strange pressure because of me, although I might not be able to meet Robert and Sarah due to the earlier dispute. I still hoped that they would be able to spend a peaceful time with each other. Today was the day Robert and Sarah were moving out. After seeing them off, I went back to the living room. Actually, I was planning to go on a trip with George's family starting tomorrow. "Thank you. I hope this settles things down for them." "That would be great, really it would." While I was offering tea and snacks to George's family for a break, I went back to my room to prepare for the trip. A trip would certainly cost a lot of money. Thinking this, I was shocked when I opened the drawer containing my bank book. This is terrible. When I hurried down to the living room, George's family looked at me in confusion. My savings, the bank book I was saving for retirement, is missing. At my words, George's family's eyes widened in shock. A thief? When could this have? What should we do? As I panicked, George's wife timidly asked, How much was in there? $250,000. At my words, the George family froze. Call the police. It must have been a thief. I yelled at George, who quickly grabbed his phone. What about Robert's family? Unaware that a thief had entered, they had moved out, and if something was missing, they would be in trouble. I called Robert. Robert, there's been a burglary. A thief broke into our house. I didn't notice at all. But make sure nothing of yours was stolen when you unpack. What? What do you mean? My savings bank book is missing. It had $250,000 in it. Surprised, Robert hesitated for a moment before responding cautiously. $250,000? Are you sure? Yes, I've been saving it for retirement since your father passed away. I'm contacting the police now. When I desperately continued, Robert exclaimed in a particularly loud voice, What? Wait, please no. That's not right. Amidst Robert's panic, Michelle turned to me and said, Excuse me for interrupting, but this house has security cameras installed, right? Even in the bedrooms? Yes, indeed. They were properly installed in that room too. Shall we check them? Prompted by her suggestion, I hurriedly took out the computer from the dresser. I wasn't familiar with how to use the computer, but using a mobile phone to check the cameras was hard to remember. So George had given me an old computer. I handed the computer over to Michelle. After skillfully operating the computer, she was shocked and speechless. Seeing her reaction made me suspicious, so I peered into the screen. Then, from the phone that was still off the hook, I could hear Robert's voice. Don't call the police. Sarah might get wrongly suspected. Almost fainting, I listened to Robert's desperate plea. 30 minutes later, Robert rushed back in his car. Facing Robert and his wife, anger began to simmer within me. Did you already call them? Just a minor misunderstanding. I'll explain, so please, let's not involve the police. I'm sorry, but I've already reported it. Now can you explain what this is all about? As I said that, Robert looked sheepishly at his wife. Sarah, showing no remorse, turned away. I felt anger towards her. I heard this was a gift. But if you call the police, Sarah will get arrested. I'll return this, so can't you just forgive her? Saying this, Robert handed me a passbook. Withdrawals had already been made for moving expenses and apartment fees. This was what Sarah meant by handling the situation. The security camera clearly showed her taking the bank book from my dresser. This is my retirement money. Why would you take it without permission? As I confronted them, Sarah, standing next to Robert, snorted and insisted, It's only fair. I was treated horribly here, so I thought I'd take this as compensation. I've never treated you badly. I never forced you to do anything, and you always had 3 meals a day, didn't you? What are you unsatisfied with? As I said this, Sarah's face turned red and she glared. I suffered more emotional distress compared to Michelle. It was hard being called over to the house and feeling like I had to have your grandchildren. Such a delusional claim from the daughter-in-law. I couldn't forgive her. Stealing someone else's belongings is something a thief would do. Do you understand that? I lived in this house too, so it's partly mine. Calling me a thief is terrible. She started crying as she said this. Robert pleaded, Please forgive her, Mom. I'm begging you. Did he really think I could forgive this? My frustration towards my careless son was growing. Hearing the exchange between me and his wife, George slammed his hand on the desk and stood up. Enough with the nonsense. With an angry face, George glared at his brother's wife. After all the care Mom has given you, how can you act like this? From what I've seen, Mom has been good to you too. Robert, you should have said something. She's your wife, isn't she? George's anger was evident as he turned his gaze. Robert swallowed hard, sweating profusely. It couldn't be helped. I didn't know. Don't say you didn't know. Why weren't you paying attention? It's because you're weak that she does whatever she wants. And this is Mom's house, not Sarah's. It's not okay to just take things as you please. George pointed at Sarah as he spoke. Seeing him, Sarah made a displeased face. What's the matter, Mama's boy? It's my fault. How dare you talk back when you're just the brother-in-law? Of course, it's your fault. I've been dissatisfied with how you treat Michelle all along. Why should my wife be belittled by someone like you? Do you have any idea how much Michelle has been struggling? But overwhelmed by George's intensity, he turned away and hung her head. Michelle hurriedly spoke to him to calm him down. George calmed down a bit, but he still glared at Sarah. Look, I'm sorry. It's true, I let Sarah do as she pleased, and I had given up thinking she wouldn't listen to me anyway. Robert apologized. Sarah confronted him, demanding him to take her side. But he only shook his head. How terrible. I thought you would be on my side. Stop it. It's a fact you stole, isn't it? When Robert said that, Sarah, in a bad mood, knocked over a nearby vase and turned away sulkily. At that moment, the police rushed in. They must have been startled by the loud noise inside. They restrained the rampaging Sarah and turned to face us. I diverted my gaze from the police and briefly glanced at the security camera. Seeing this, the police confirmed the theft of the bank book by Sarah and then took her into custody. Robert, say something. Help me, Sarah pleaded. It's too late now. Why would you say that?